A stroll across Saturn's glittering rings. The heavens stretched wide, an expanse of infinite dusk where stars winked in and out like the flickering pulse of the universe. Saturn loomed above, its gilded rings curving with a grace that defied comprehension. A celestial road to nowhere and everywhere. Amid this silence, the traveler walked, though to call it walking was imprecise. There was no ground beneath their feet, no air to carry their breaths. Instead, they drifted, untethered and weightless, as though their very existence had been surrendered to the void. Their name had been forgotten, if they had ever possessed one. Their memories, too, were like shadows glimpsed through thick fog. The only certainty was the ache in their chest, a hollow yearning that resonated with the faint hum of the rings above. They had been drawn here, though they did not know why, nor what they sought. As they drifted closer to the edge of Saturn's brilliance, a figure emerged from the darkness. Cloaked in obsidian, the being seemed to absorb the light around it, their silhouette a void against the cosmic glow. Eyes like twin, extinguished stars peered out from beneath the hood, and though their face was hidden, the traveler felt the weight of their gaze. A gaze that saw through the flesh, through the bone, and into the marrow of one's being. "You are lost," the figure said, their voice a melody of echoes, as if spoken not from lips, but from the folds of eternity itself. The traveler hesitated, their voice trembling as they replied, I don't know where I am." The figure tilted their head, emotion both curious and dispassionate. "You are precisely where you must be. The rings have called you." "Why?" The question tumbled from the traveler's lips, a fragile sound against the vastness. "What do they want from me?" The figure stepped forward, their cloak swirling as though caught in unseen currents. "Not the rings. You. They reveal nothing to the cosmos, only to the soul. Each step upon them unravels a thread of your being, unveiling the truths you've long buried." The traveler recoiled, their breath catching in their throat. "Why would I want that? Some truths are better left forgotten." The guide's eyes gleamed faintly, like embers coaxed to life. "Perhaps, but the forgetting comes at a price. You carry a yearning that will not be silenced. You seek answers, though you fear them." The traveler said nothing, but their silence betrayed a quiet assent. The hollow ache in their chest pulsed anew, its rhythm syncopated with the faint hum of the rings. Whatever they sought, it was tethered to that ache, and to turn away now felt like abandoning the last shard of their humanity. The guide extended a hand, gloved in dark fabric. "Step forward, traveler. The rings await." Trembling, the traveler reached out, their hand brushing the guide's. A cold, like the vacuum of space, seeped into their skin, and yet it was not unpleasant. It was clarity, pure and unyielding. Together they turned toward the shimmering expanse of Saturn's rings. The first step felt like slipping through the fabric of reality. The rings were not solid ground, but an amalgamation of light and crystal, suspended in a state that defied logic. Beneath their feet, the traveler saw not stone or ice, but glimpses of stars long dead, their light still traveling through the void. Each fragment shimmered with a soft luminescence, as though alive. The traveler glanced at the guide, whose expression remained veiled by the obsidian hood. "What lies ahead?" "Only what you bring with you," the guide replied, their voice neither reassuring nor foreboding. "Each ring is a mirror, reflecting the facets of your soul. The path is yours to walk, but it is not without cost." With a deep breath, the traveler nodded, though their resolve was fragile. Together, they stepped into the expanse, the rings singing a soundless song beneath their feet. Above them, Saturn loomed, a sentinel of secrets, as the journey began. The traveler's first step onto the ring felt as though the universe itself exhaled, a deep and ancient sigh reverberating through their very core. The surface beneath their feet shimmered, translucent and ever-shifting, as if they walked upon a frozen river of starlight. The air, or what passed for it, was heavy with silence, a silence that carried weight, pressing upon the traveler's chest and demanding their attention. "This ring remembers," the guide murmured, their voice soft but firm, like a whisper etched into the void. They moved ahead with a fluid grace, their obsidian cloak trailing like a shadow untethered from the rules of time. "Listen." The traveler paused, straining to hear something, anything beyond the deafening quiet. At first, there was nothing but the faint hum of the cosmos. Then, like a drop of ink spreading across water, the sound grew, a gentle melody, distant and melancholic. It was familiar, though the traveler could not place its origin. Before they could ask, the surface of the ring shifted. Images began to coalesce, faint at first, then growing sharper, more vivid. The traveler froze as they realized what they were seeing. Moments from a life they had forgotten. A child's laughter echoed across the ring, clear and sweet, as though it had never been silenced by time. The traveler turned to see a boy running through a field, his arms outstretched like wings, the golden light of a terrestrial sun spilling across his form. The boy's face was obscured, but the sight stirred something deep within the traveler, a pang of recognition, of loss. "Who is he?" the traveler asked, their voice cracking like dry leaves underfoot. "You tell me," the guide replied, standing still and watching the scene unfold. The traveler took a step closer, and the image shifted. The boy was older now, his laughter replaced by an uncertain smile as he stood beside a tall figure cloaked in shadow. A hand, gentle yet firm, rested on the boy's shoulder, guiding him forward. The traveler felt a strange tug in their chest, a pull toward the shadowy figure. "Is that—" They hesitated, the words catching in their throat. "Is that me?" The guide said nothing, their silence as impenetrable as their shrouded face. The scene dissolved into a swirl of light, reforming into another memory. A girl appeared, her face illuminated by the flicker of candlelight. She was speaking, her lips moving in silent rhythm, though the words were lost to the traveler. Her eyes held a sadness, an unspoken longing that mirrored the hollow ache in the traveler's own chest. "Do you know her?" the guide asked, their tone devoid of judgment, yet piercing all the same. The traveler faltered, reaching out towards the image as if touching it would solidify the truth. But the hand passed through the light, leaving it undisturbed. I think I did. Once. The ring's surface quivered, the memories fracturing like shards of glass. The laughter, the shadowed figure, the girl. They scattered into fleeting fragments, drifting into the void. The traveler's chest tightened, a sudden panic gripping them. "Wait," they cried. "I wasn't finished. I don't understand." The guide turned to face them, their eyes gleaming faintly beneath the hood. Memory is a river, not a still pool. You cannot hold it. You can only let it flow. "But I need to know who they were, who I was," the traveler insisted, their voice trembling. "Why would the ring show me this and then take it away?" The guide tilted their head, the gesture both curious and enigmatic. "It has taken nothing. What you saw was always within you. The ring merely reveals what your soul already knows." The traveler felt a weight in their chest, not the ache of longing, but the burden of a truth, glimpsed and yet not grasped. They stared at the surface of the ring, now still and unyielding, and whispered, "I don't even know what I'm looking for." The guide's voice softened, almost tender. "Then take another step. Perhaps the next ring will answer." The traveler hesitated, their feet rooted in the shimmering expanse. But the ache in their chest pulsed, urging them forward. Slowly they turned their gaze to the horizon, where the rings stretched endlessly, each one glimmering with the promise of more truth, more pain, more understanding. With a deep breath, they stepped forward, the guide following silently at their side. Behind them, the first ring faded into the endless glow of Saturn, its secrets now imprinted upon their soul. The second ring shimmered darker, its glow a muted radiance as if the light itself had grown weary. The traveler stepped hesitantly onto its surface, and a heaviness settled over them, not of the body but of the soul. The shimmering fragments beneath their feet now seemed alive, swirling and coalescing into shapes that pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, like a heartbeat out of sync. "This ring is different," the traveler said, their voice barely a whisper against the oppressive quiet. The guide, still and silent beside them, turned their heads slightly, their hidden gaze fixed on the path ahead. "Desire," they said, the single word echoing like a distant bell. "Here, the weight of what you long for will be made known." The traveler felt a shiver run through them, the words pressing against the fragile walls of their understanding. They moved forward, the ground beneath their feet rippling as though responding to their presence. With each step, the swirling shapes grew more distinct, forming images that flickered and shifted like mirages in a heat wave. At first, they were faint, dreamlike, a throne of light surrounded by a crowd of faceless figures. The traveler squinted, trying to discern their features, but the vision dissolved as quickly as it appeared. Then came another, a garden bathed in eternal twilight, where the traveler stood alone, their hands buried in the earth, planting seeds that glowed faintly in the dim light. "What are these?" the traveler asked, turning to the guide. "They feel familiar, but I don't understand them." The guide gestured to the flickering images, their movements slow and deliberate. "What you see are echoes of your desires. Some you've embraced, others you've buried. This ring does not judge. It merely reflects." The traveler stared at the shifting visions, a strange mixture of longing and unease rising within them. A new image began to form, sharper and more vivid than the others. This time it was a house, small but warm, its windows glowing with golden light. Inside, the traveler saw a figure seated by a fire, their face obscured by shadow. The sight filled the traveler with an inexplicable ache, a yearning so fierce it brought tears to their eyes. "Do you know them?" the guide asked, their voice quiet but piercing. The travelers shook their head, though their heart whispered a different answer. "No," they said, the word feeling hollow. "But I think I should." The image wavered, then shifted. A house dissolved, replaced by a vast expanse of stars. In the center of the void, the travelers saw themselves, but not as they were now. This version of them stood taller, their posture commanding, a crown of light resting upon their brow. Around them, galaxies spun in a dance of silent reverence, their movements dictated by the traveler's unspoken will. A surge of power coursed through the traveler, exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "Is this me?" they asked, their voice trembling. "Perhaps," the guide replied, their tone unreadable. "Or perhaps it is merely who you wish to be." The traveler's chest tightened as the image shifted once more. This time, they stood in a forest, surrounded by towering trees whose leaves glowed faintly, as though capturing the light of distant stars. There was no crown, no galaxy at their feet, only a quiet solitude, a peace that seemed to fill the very air. The traveler turned to the guide, their voice rising with frustration. "Why show me all this? These visions, they're just fragments. I don't know what to do with them." The guide's eyes glimmered faintly beneath their hood. Desire is rarely whole. It fractures and shifts, taking new shapes with each passing moment. The ring reveals what lies within, but only you can decide what to carry forward. The traveler clenched their fists, the weight of the images pressing heavily upon them. The crown of light, the house by the fire, the solitude of the forest, all of them called to different parts of their soul, pulling them in conflicting directions. "I don't know what I want," they admitted, their voice breaking. The guide placed a gloved hand on their shoulder, their touch as cold and steady as the void. "Then you must continue forward. Desire will not answer you here, but its weight will prepare you for what lies ahead." The traveler nodded, though uncertainty clung to them like a shadow. They took another step, then another, the visions fading into the darkened glow of the ring. The weight in their chest did not lessen, but their resolve hardened against it. As the edge of the second ring approached, the traveler looked back one last time, but the images were gone, swallowed by the void. They turned toward the next ring, their footsteps heavy with the burden of unspoken longing. The third ring loomed ahead, a vast expanse cloaked in muted light. Unlike the brilliance of the first, or the dim glow of the second, this ring seemed shrouded in shadow, as if its very existence defied the celestial radiance of Saturn. The traveler hesitated at its threshold, a cold unease curling in their chest like smoke. "This one feels different," they murmured. "It is," the guide replied, their voice heavier now, as though burdened by the weight of what lay ahead. "The third ring does not reflect what was or what you desire. It reveals what you have hidden, even from yourself." The traveler swallowed hard, their breath catching as the guide stepped forward, their obsidian cloak dissolving into the shadows like ink in water. Left with no choice, the traveler followed, their steps tentative. The surface beneath their feet was cool, smooth, and unyielding, a stark contrast to the ever-shifting energy of the previous rings. The shadows around them began to stir, shifting and writhing like living entities. At first they were indistinct, amorphous shapes and blending into the darkness. But as the traveler pressed on, the shadows coalesced, forming figures that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. One of the figures stepped forward, emerging from the void with a slow, deliberate grace. The traveler's breath hitched as they recognized the shape. It was themselves, but twisted, distorted. This version of them was hunched, its eyes gleaming with something cold and sharp. "Who are you?" the traveler asked, their voice a fragile thread. "I'm you," the shadow replied, its voice an echo of the traveler's own but tinged with a biting edge. "I am the part you buried." The traveler's chest tightened. "Buried?" "Yes," the shadow hissed, stepping closer. "I am every fear you refused to face, every doubt you swallowed whole. I am the lies you told yourself to survive." The traveler took a step back, their heart pounding. "I didn't." "You did," the shadow interrupted, its voice rising like a storm. "You built walls to keep me out. You told yourself you were fine, that you didn't need to feel the things that hurt. But here I am, still waiting in the dark." The guide stood silent nearby, their presence a calm anchor in the storm of the traveler's emotions. They did not intervene, their gaze fixed on the unfolding confrontation. The traveler clenched their fists, their voice trembling as they spoke. "What do you want from me?" The shadow tilted its head, a cold smile curling on its lips. "I want nothing. I am you. The question is, what do you want from me?" The traveler's mind reeled, fragments of memory and emotion swirling like debris in a hurricane. They had buried so much: pain, fear, anger. To confront it now felt like standing before a tidal wave, powerless to stop its force. Another figure emerged from the shadows, smaller, quieter. This one bore a softer visage, its eyes filled with a sorrow that pierced the traveler's heart. "I am the grief you ignored," it whispered, "the dreams you let slip away." The traveler staggered, the weight of the words pressing down on them like a crushing tide. "Why now?" they asked, their voice cracking. "Why show me this?" The guide finally spoke, their voice steady and deliberate, because the truth, no matter how long you bury it, does not disappear. It waits. And here, on this ring, there is no place left to hide. The traveller's knees buckled, and they fell to the surface of the ring, their head bowed. The shadows swirled around them, their whispers blending into a cacophony of guilt, regret, and unspoken truths. For what felt like an eternity, the traveller knelt there, their chest heaving with the weight of it all, and then a voice, faint and fragile, yet steady, rose above the noise. It was their own voice, but it carried a strength they had long forgotten. "I am afraid," the traveller said, their words trembling but resolute. "But I will not run anymore." The shadows paused, their forms flickering like dying embers. Slowly they began to dissolve, their light fading into the darkness. One by one they disappeared, leaving the traveller alone on the ring. When they rose, their body felt heavier, but their heart felt lighter. They turned to the guide, who nodded solemnly. "You have accepted what was buried. The truth is no longer your enemy." The traveller glanced back at the ring, its surface now smooth and still, before setting their gaze on the horizon. The fourth ring awaited, its glow faint but beckoning. With a deep breath, they stepped forward, the shadows of the past fading behind them. The fourth ring faded into memory as the traveller reached the threshold of the final ring. It hung before them like a fragile bridge between existence and the infinite, its surface translucent and faintly shimmering, as though made of light spun so fine it threatened to dissolve underfoot. A strange stillness pervaded the space, heavier and more profound than silence itself. "This is the last ring," the traveller murmured, their voice subdued by the weight of their journey. They turned to the guide, who stood as still and inscrutable as ever. "What lies beyond?" The guide's hood tilted slightly, revealing nothing yet conveying everything. "The horizon," they said, their voice softer now, almost reverent. "Here, the ring's end, and the unknown begins. You must cross it alone." The traveller stiffened, the words stirring a quiet panic deep within them. "Alone? You've been with me this whole time. Why now?" The guide stepped forward, the faint glow of the ring catching the edges of their obsidian cloak. "Because this step is yours alone. Beyond the horizon lies not memory, not desire, not truth, but the infinite possibility of what you will become. No one can walk it for you." The traveller swallowed hard, their gaze drifting to the edge of the ring where it seemed to dissolve into the void. They wanted to protest, to plead for the guide's companionship just a little longer, but the words caught in their throat. Instead, they looked back at the path they had taken. The shimmering light of the first ring, the pulsing shadows of the second, the suffocating truths of the third. Each step had brought pain, revelation, and understanding. Each step had changed them. "What if I'm not ready?" they asked, their voice barely a whisper. "No one ever is," the guide replied, their voice a faint echo of the universe itself. "But readiness is not the point. The point is to take the step, The traveler turned back to the final ring, their breath shallow. They could feel the ache in their chest, the same ache that had carried them through every step of this journey. But now, it felt different. Not an emptiness, but a fullness, a quiet home of all they had discovered and all that remained unknown. With trembling hands, they placed one foot onto the ring. The surface was cool, almost ethereal, as though it might dissolve beneath them. Yet it held, steady and firm, as they took another step and then another. The guide remained behind, watching silently as the traveler moved farther away, their form growing smaller against the vastness. As the traveler walked, the ring beneath them began to change. Its translucent glow deepened, shifting into hues of gold, silver and violet, colors that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of their heartbeat. The horizon, once distant and indistinct, now shimmered with an otherworldly brilliance. It was not a line, nor a boundary, but a gateway of light, swirling and infinite. The traveler paused, their steps faltering as they reached the edge. Here, the ring ended, its surface dissolving into the brilliance ahead. They stood for a long moment, staring into the swirling void, their heart pounding with equal parts fear and wonder. Behind them, the guide's voice echoed faintly, though they did not turn. This is where you choose. To stay is to remain bound by what you have known. To step forward is to embrace the unknown, to become something more. The traveler closed their eyes, the ache in their chest swelling to a crescendo. For a fleeting moment, they thought of the shadows, the visions, the truths they had uncovered. Each one had brought them closer to this moment, this choice. They opened their eyes, their breath steadying as they gazed into the light. "I'm ready," they whispered, the words carrying a strength they had not known they possessed. And with that, they stepped forward. The light enveloped them, warm and boundless, dissolving the edges of their being. They felt no fear, only a profound sense of release, as though every thread of their soul was being unraveled and rewoven into something new. The ache in their chest faded, replaced by a quiet, endless hum, a song without words, carrying them into the unknown. The rings of Saturn shimmered faintly behind them, their secrets returned to the silence of the cosmos. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, the traveler became more than they had ever been. The guide watched as the last ripple of the traveler's presence faded into the void. Then, with a motion as soft as starlight, they turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving the rings to their eternal dance.